Good morning. It's good to see you today. Hope you are doing well. It is New Testament Thursday, and I wanted to talk about sin this morning. A lot of times we have this idea, well, that all sin is the same, and certainly it all leads to the same place. But I was thinking about different categories of sin. And when you start thinking about that, you might think about, for example, we're pretty familiar with sins of commission and sins of omission. And we should understand what that is talking about. 1 John chapter 3 at verse 4 says, "Whoever commits sin commits lawlessness, and sin is lawlessness." The idea of committing a sin. But in James chapter 4 at verse 17, it says that to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin. So you can commit sin, or you, in essence, you sin when you do not do something that you know that you should. So you have those two categories. Also, I would suggest there are sins of ignorance. In 1 Timothy chapter 1, in 1 Timothy 1 at verse 13, Paul talking about himself concerning all those things he did as Saul of Tarsus. He says that he obtained mercy because he had done them ignorantly in unbelief. There are sins of ignorance. And you might think about different places in Scripture where people, they did not know. You think about Jesus. Jesus said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." They were sinning ignorantly. There are sins of ignorance. But in Hebrews chapter 10, at verse 26, it talks about willfully sinning. It says, "For if we sin willfully after we have received the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins." Right? That is sinning willfully. It is being openly rebellious. Even though you know what you should do, you do not do it. In another category you might think about, in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, at verse 18, just consider this verse. It says, "Flee sexual immorality. Every sin that a man does is outside the body, but he who commits sexual immorality sins against his own body." Sexual immorality is a peculiar sin. Every other sin is outside the body, but sexual immorality, it is against his own body. Right? So not all sins are the same. One last one in John chapter 19. In John chapter 19, as the Lord was on his way to the cross, he tells Pilate, he says, "You could have no power at all against me unless it had been given you from above. Therefore, the one who delivered me to you has the greater sin." That somewhat causes us to ask the question, if the deliverer has the greater sin, does that mean that there are people who have the lesser sin? And I think you would have to say so. And what the Lord is talking about, some people are more responsible. In the situation where the blind lead the blind, who is more responsible, the blind leader or the blind follower? The blind leader has committed the greater sin. They both fall into the ditch, of course. And that's what we're talking about. The highway to hell, there's quite a few lanes on the highway to hell. They all go to the same place, though. But I hope you enjoyed this study. God bless you. Think about these things. Be a blessing to others. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Thanks for studying with us.